What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Matt is going to be joining me in just a moment to talk week 11 of the NFL season. Had some primo quarterback matchups over the weekend. Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert, Matt Stafford versus the Drake May. I'm only half kidding about that last one because he is and will be a stud, just like Sean McVay said. So we're going to talk about all that and a little bit more. We're going to look ahead to week 12, give you some gambling picks after one of our best gambling weeks of the year in week 11. Lots to be proud of there. So we'll do Thursday night picks and then picks for the weekend. But before we get started, just a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. We really appreciate you guys listening and we'd love to hear from you. We're going to talk a lot of legacy on the podcast today. So reach out to us. Let us know how you feel about your quarterback's legacy. Or if you want to talk hockey, baseball off season, basketball, anything else you guys want to talk, feel free to hit us up. You'll get me responding to you, not like spam or robot, anything like that. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's talk week 11. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, fresh off of week 11 of the NFL season. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Good, how are you?
I am fantastic. I was waiting for you to say better than so and so. That's usually how the podcast is. You're like better than.
Better than your fantasy football team.
Ooh, that didn't take long. Yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to give you a break there, but
How much did you end up beating me by this week?
oh god, it was close to 100.
I think it was 90. I think
Yeah.
90 is what we ended. Yeah, Matt beat me
Yeah.
by 90 in fantasy football.
Yeah.
To get to like what are you now 3-8, and
Yeah.
I'm 8-3, and yet I
But
lost
I'm
by
I'm
about
third in the
100
league
points.
in points scored.
That's brutal. That's like that one year I was first in the league in points scored and I missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think I had the top three wide receivers that had like Cooper Kupp, Debo Samuel, and Devontae Adams that year, and they were
Yeah.
literally receivers 1, 2, and 3, and I missed the playoffs. So I feel your pain there. I was debating if this is like a burn the tape week where you just throw everything away. You're just like, okay, we're just moving on to the next week. My team's not watching that film. We're done there. Or if this was like my Dallas Cowboys weekend, I'm just like, yeah, I had people on a bye and they're like, Adam, you lost by 90. And I'm like, yeah, but we're not that bad. We're just missing some people. It was fine. It would have been fine. No, it was a Schmeckeldorfing for the ages, honestly. And it started immediately because you have so many Lions on your team and they beat the ever living hell out of the Jacksonville
Yeah.
Jaguars. So, yeah, I kind of knew it was over on Thursday night, actually, when Terry McLaurin caught one pass. And I was
Yeah.
like, the rest of this is not going to go great.
Yeah.
But that's probably like my team only scored 72, I think, which was by far the least my team has scored this year by
Hmm.
like a good 35-point margin. And I'm like, man, if you're gonna lay an absolute egg like that, might as well be the week your opponent scores 162.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't gonna beat that anyway. So yeah. Oof. Oof. Time to move on. So I didn't really watch my fantasy team on Sunday because there was obviously no point. I already knew how that was gonna end. But I was watching these matchups between all these great quarterbacks. So I mentioned this in the open, but Josh Allen played Patrick Mahomes this weekend. Burrow played
Hmm.
Herbert. Uh, Lamar was playing against Pittsburgh, which is always fun. You don't want to overreact to one game in the NFL season for any team, but it's hard not to watch those guys go up against each other and start thinking about their legacies. And kind of what I want to talk about is like the bigger picture of this season and how these guys have kind of either redefined their legacy or they're kind of bolstering it. Like
Hmm.
in Lamar Jackson's case, it's not a good thing. And we'll talk about him in a minute, but like I don't want to overreact to Buffalo beating Kansas City on Sunday and be like, okay, Josh Allen is now the best quarterback in the league. He defeated Patrick Mahomes because it's obviously not true. But watching the Bills beat Kansas City 30-21, I think it was the first time I've ever really rooted for Josh Allen because we had him in the weekend bet on this podcast, and I also had money on him in my personal life. And rooting for Josh Allen was really fun, watching him do Josh Allen things.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm getting a sneak peek of what it's going to be like rooting for Drake May in 5 years with his rocket launcher arm and running ability. But I was watching the game and I was really thinking about how this season has kind of redefined Josh Allen as a quarterback. Not only because he actually beat Patrick Mahomes, and granted, it's a regular season game and doesn't really mean anything because, like, if you don't do it in the playoffs, what does it matter?
Yep.
But we talked about this in the preseason, so like credit to us. But this new system without Diggs and without Gabe Davis, they trade Diggs, they let Davis walk in free agency. We talked about how it was maybe like the top end talent wasn't going to be there in the receiving core this season, but it was deeper. And with this system and relying more on like James Cook and Josh Allen's legs, they actually had a chance to be better this season without those guys. And I think that all of this has kind of combined to make Josh Allen a better quarterback. Because like he's not going to put up the big, gaudy, eye-popping numbers this season. Currently, he's on pace for 3,900 yards and 28 touchdowns, both of which would be his lowest since year 2 in the league. But he's also only on pace for 8 interceptions, which would be the lowest of his career. So he's avoiding the back-breaking mistakes and just like overall playing cleaner, better quarterback. And the results are showing because the team is 9-2. And in my opinion, I think this is the best Buffalo team we've seen with Josh Allen. Maybe ever, but at least since the 13 seconds here.
The tipping point too for me earlier in the week before the game was actually played was I kind of looked at what this Buffalo team is doing because they have transitioned to trying to play a lot more like Kansas City. And a lot of those things that Kansas City is relying on doing to win games, Buffalo is just better at doing right now. I think that's kind of the secret there with quarterbacks in general is that even if you have an absolute anomaly of a human being at quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, like any of these guys, you really want to make sure that like the plan isn't to rely on them to win the game for you. Your play style has to be the plan, and then they get to put on the cape if they need to, right? And that's exactly how it happened for Buffalo, right? Like that the game plan kept them in the game, but like when it came down to it, Josh put on the cape at the last moment to make an absolutely incredible play.
Yeah, that was probably the
That
play of the
like
year so far.
yeah, that like again, like maybe 3 guys in the league can make put the team on his back, but he only had to do it for one play.
Yeah, the two things I wrote down that actually had me the most excited about the Bills on Sunday, and like I am not. It takes a lot to get me excited about the Buffalo Bills. I always say this, but a couple of years ago, when everybody was like, "The Bills are going to win the Super Bowl," I was like, "The Bills are going to win the Super Bowl." The Bills, but even I am taking them seriously as a contender this year, and it's two things that really showed up on Sunday for me. One is that when it was time to make a play, like nut crunching time in that game, Buffalo scores, they go up by 9, and then Kansas City goes right down and scores, and all of a sudden it's like a 2-point game again.
Yeah.
I was waiting for, okay, here's Josh Allen, 3 straight deep balls. Like we're going to start slinging this thing all over the field because this is what we've seen in past years. And even the home playoff game against Kansas City last year, it's what we saw where they exactly like you said, they had this game plan, they executed, they did well the whole game to get a lead. But then when it came into crunch time, they reverted back to this like,
Yep.
grip it and rip it Bills team where they're like, Stephon Diggs is down there somewhere. And I was still waiting for that.
Yeah.
And it didn't show up. And that was the big thing. It's like all the big drives, the big like they stuck to the run game, they kept it on the
Hmm.
ground. They threw the ball, but it was like shorter passes to guys like Shakir and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like they just played good offense and moved the ball. They didn't try to win the game in
Hmm.
one play.
Trusting James Cook to do his job.
Yeah. And two, and probably the more important thing that got me excited, they went for the jugular against Kansas City.
Yeah.
So they're up two with 2:17 left. It's 4th and 2 from Kansas City's 26. How many teams would have just kicked the field goal there and be like, we're going to go up five and make Patrick Mahomes beat us? And then Patrick Mahomes would just beat you. And like the answer is at least what's Kansas City's record now? 9-1.
Yeah.
So at least nine other teams would have
Hmm.
played the game that way because every team they've played this year has played the game that way.
Yeah.
Like we were just bitching about that with the Bucks a couple weeks ago, where they score with less than a minute left, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna tie and go to overtime," instead of trying to go for the kill. Like nobody has had the balls to like just go for the kill against
Hmm.
Kansas City in these situations. I mean, I guess you could argue the Broncos were going to kick a field goal and it got blocked, but
Yeah. They did what they needed to on their end, but you've gotta shore that up. You can't let that
yeah,
happen.
that's a rough. I would also argue they could have been more aggressive on that drive and tried to punch it in the end zone instead of relying on
Yeah.
a field goal by a guy named Lutz, but that's okay. But I think in years past, like Buffalo, one would have been slinging this thing deep all over the place. Two, they would have taken the field goal. Or three, they just would have done something stupid. And like they did the smart thing. They're like, what is the number one thing that Kansas City does not want you to do in that situation? They don't want you to go for it. They don't want you to put the ball in Josh Allen's hands and be like, here you go, Josh, here's the game. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what Buffalo did. And that's why they beat Kansas City. That's why they're the first team to beat them this season, is because
Hmm.
they're like, no, we're ending this now. We're taking destiny into our own hands because we have Josh Allen, and Josh Allen rewards them by, like you said, making the play of the year.
Yeah.
Like that's the team I need to see if I'm going to believe that Buffalo can make the Super Bowl. Not even saying win the Super Bowl. Like if anybody is going to knock the Chiefs out of the playoffs this year before the Super Bowl, it has to be someone that's willing to go for the kill.
Yeah.
It's kind of part of, both of our preseason Super Bowl picks was the Lions to beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
It's part of like why I'm comfortable picking the Lions to do that, because
Yeah.
I know if it's 4th and 2 and the Lions are up two, that they're going for it. And I'm glad that Buffalo showed us that there's another team in the league that has the balls to do the same.
I think the Ravens would too. However, my concern with the Ravens is they'll abandon their game plan.
Do oh God, do you want to talk about the Ravens next?
I can talk about them whenever.
All right. So like just to finish up on Josh Allen, the Bills are 9-2. One of their losses this season is that Josh Allen concussion game in Houston,
Yeah.
where he gets hurt, should have been taken out of the game, and then goes like 9 for 30. Doesn't know where he is or where his receivers are. And the other was the one where they actually got decimated by aforementioned Ravens.
Hmm.
So Josh is now the MVP favorite after this game. He's plus 150. Lamar is plus 200. But again, none of this matters unless you beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs.
Yep.
Like this is all great. It's all well and good. I like what I'm seeing. But if we're sitting here in what, 2 months, 3 months, something like that, and you have the same situation in the playoffs and you lose, it's like, okay, well, all of that was for naught. So
Yeah.
I like what they're doing this season. I like where Josh Allen is going. Or
Like I mean, I've said it before. Like I still think Sean McDermott still needs to prove that he's not a chode coach. All of the issues they've had in years past fall squarely on him. They're clearly trending in the right direction, but if we revert back to all the same mistakes that we've seen in past playoff runs, none of what we've seen this year matters.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much can say this for every point we're going to make on the podcast today is like, it doesn't matter unless you do it when it matters.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I mean, speaking of making all of the same mistakes you always make, the Baltimore Ravens went to Pittsburgh and lost 18-16 on Sunday. I I thought that the Ravens played all of the best hits from all of their bad playoff losses. It's like, okay, big game against obviously a playoff caliber team in Pittsburgh who's 8-2 now
Mm-hmm.
with an elite defense.
Yeah.
What do? Lamar Jackson, 33 passes, even though he only completed 16 of them, which is less than 50%.
Yeah.
And they ran the ball 19 times. So it's not as bad as only running the ball 6 times or whatever it was, but
No.
it's 33 passes, 19 runs when you're averaging 6.5 yards per run.
No, but like
It's the same shit they always do.
I just don't understand why when you play him twice a year, you go into this game and think, I'm going to try and give TJ Watt more opportunities to rush the passer than I need to. Because every time you do that, you're giving that defense a chance to score. He's that good that you can reasonably expect that if he gets to your quarterback, they might score on that play. I don't understand it. And especially like going out getting Derrick Henry this offseason, like was a big play. And these are the games where you want to use him. I don't get it. Like
Derrick
John,
Henry, 13 carries in this game. 13
like
carries, 0 catches.
John Harbaugh is like at the top of the list of like good bad coaches. Like
Yeah.
like it's its own like really weird category that like not a whole lot of guys fit into, but he's at the top of the list.
It's like, is he a good bad coach or is he a bad good coach?
Yes.
It, the Ravens are just always their own worst enemy. And it's like, this is the thing that I lost my mind about in the playoffs last year and just couldn't get over it. And every time it's come up so far this season, I've gotten pissed. But like, you do this every time.
Yeah.
Every time. It's like, oh, we have a big game against a good team. What are we going to do? Let's attack this defense by throwing twice as many times as we pass, or
Yeah.
by throwing twice as many times as we run. It's like, oh, is the run game not working? No, we're averaging 6.5 yards per carry. Oh, okay. Did the game get out of hand? No, not really. I mean, it was like 18-9 at one point, but it's not out of hand to the point where you need to pass on every single damn play. Because what was it? It was 18-10 because they scored to make it 18-16, and then they had to go for 2 to tie, and they ran the dumbest 2-point conversion play I've
Yeah.
ever seen in my life. Where, and you know, like the ironic thing of it all is that's when you decide to run. Is
Yep.
the 2-point conversion is you decide to do like QB fake reverse power to the left when as soon as Lamar Jackson leaves that pocket, you fucking know the receiver. They're not going to run a reverse. Lamar Jackson's getting that ball. You know, it's like, I hated that play call, but like 33 passes when you're completing less than 50% of them
Yeah.
to 19 runs is it's just typical Ravens looking into the playoffs this year and looking at their potential matchups. I'm really questioning if they can beat anybody that they're going to play. I mean, right now they'd be matched up against Pittsburgh, who We just saw what happened there. Houston, so Pittsburgh has the number 8 ranked defense. Houston has the number 4 ranked defense. And like, while Houston's offense has not been very good, the defense has been elite this season. So, like, am I comfortable taking Lamar to go up against that defense on the road? Kansas City has the 5th ranked defense. I'm definitely not comfortable taking Lamar to beat Kansas City and John Harbaugh. I, weirdly enough, we just talked about the Bills and just got done praising Josh Allen, but like the
Hmm.
Bills might be Baltimore's best matchup in the first round
Yeah.
because the Bills defense is like, it's been good, but it's not great like those other defenses. They're 16th in yards allowed. But when the Bills are your best matchup, now you're also asking your defense, which is 26 in yards allowed, to stop Josh Allen. And I know they beat the shit out of him earlier this year, but that's not exactly a position that I want to be in where I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is a good
Well,
matchup.
I think the irony is too, like, you look at this game that they just played. I mean, that was a pretty crucial game for winning the division, seeding, all that stuff. You just kind of wasted your defense's best performance of the year. A defense that like has been rightfully so much maligned because they can't stop anything through the air. In fact, I picked up Russell Wilson to start him in one of my leagues, thinking like this, this, this is the matchup. This is the matchup to play Russell Wilson. And then they pull out their best performance of the year. But like again, offensively, just throw the game plan out the window. Probably more accurately, created a game plan more targeted on Lamar's legacy and less on winning the game.
This was the Russell Wilson pass from the goal line instead of handing it off to Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
I think that play is ultimately what's going on with Baltimore and why
Hmm.
they cannot be more successful is because like the whole story behind that is they're like, we want Russell Wilson to be the face of the franchise moving forward. Let's let him throw the game winner instead of letting Marshawn Lynch run it in because like they were annoyed by Marshawn and his antics with the media and all that stuff. And they're like, yes, legacy moment for Russell Wilson. And they were right. It was a legacy moment for Russell Wilson. It's not the way that they intended.
Yeah.
But
In
that's
in
the Ravens in a nutshell, though, is they're like, all right, we have a big game against Pittsburgh. It's time for Lamar Jackson to show out. And it's like, okay, yeah, we have Derrick Henry now, and we're averaging 6.5 yards a rush. And they're like, we don't give a shit about that. Lamar Jackson's going to win his 3rd MVP. Watch. And he shits his pants. And like, it's horrible. It's a horrible game for him and drops him
yeah.
out of being first place in the MVP ballots.
Though those comments from Harbaugh from the offseason about making Lamar Jackson the GOAT, just it's really kind of it just lingers in my head with some of the decisions that we're seeing.
Whenever
If
you watch a
we,
game like this, that's the first thing that I go to.
I mean, shit, if you want to accomplish that, just win the games. He can become the GOAT by handing it off to Derrick Henry.
Well, especially in like a regular season game at Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
Just make the right decisions, do the right things. You know what Tom Brady, the GOAT, would do in that situation? Check to a fucking run,
yeah,
guys. I watched him hand the ball off to Jonas Gray 26 times against the Colts one time. Remember that? He like
yeah,
ran for 204 touchdowns and then we never saw him again.
yeah.
But it was the right
Like
thing to do.
we're just gonna like ignore that he had like big years from guys like Corey Dillon. Well, Garrett Blunt had like what 18 touchdowns
Mm-hmm.
in a year?
No, every time they played the Colts, after a certain point, they're just like, we are running on the Colts. And Tom was like, hand it off, hand it off. And they're like, oh, Tom, you didn't do much in this game. And he's like, yeah, it's like the best game of the season for me. I didn't have to do anything. And we won by 30.
Yeah.
So it's a different mentality than okay, it's time for me to get mine. And I think that there is a portion of the Ravens coaching and players that are holding this team back by being like, it's time for Lamar to get his.
Yeah.
Can I tell you possibly the most alarming stat of the entire season from this Ravens Pittsburgh game?
Yeah, sure. I don't think I
Russell
want.
Wilson won this game with a QBR of 14.4. Yeah, they kicked 6 field goals, won the game against MVP, was the front runner, Lamar Jackson. But the Ravens have another big game, another huge spot this weekend, Monday Night Football against the Chargers,
Yeah.
which again, this is critical now for playoff seeding because they're a half game behind the Chargers. It's a
Hmm.
road game. It's against a team that has a really good defense. And I fully expect to watch Lamar Jackson throw the ball 35 times on Monday. Give it to
I
Henry.
can definitely see that. However, I can also see a scenario where it's Harbaugh versus Harbaugh, and they're like, no, we're gonna out old school each other.
I'm excited for that game. I kind of forgot it was Harbaugh versus Harbaugh actually until you said that. Yeah, I think it's big for the Ravens. And like I could see the like, okay, we learned our lesson from last week. Let's like buckle
Hmm.
down for this week. But no matter what happens in this game, I am on high alert for the
Yeah.
playoffs with the Baltimore Ravens. Like they are, we did panic meters last week. They are like 9 out of 10. I am very worried about them even getting out of the first round of the playoffs right now. Not because they're not talented enough to do it.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they're smart enough to do it. And that may be a bigger problem. Speaking of the Chargers, though, they beat the Bengals 34-27 on Sunday Night Football to drop Cincy to 4-7. Chargers go to 7-3 and take over the number one wild card spot. This game was the most Bengals Chargers that a Bengals Chargers game could have been. When I heard the Bengals were playing the Chargers, I was like, oh man, the Chargers are going to get a huge lead and then blow it and then beat the Bengals in heartbreaking fashion. It's been for the Chargers, blowing leads is like, I mean, name a more iconic duo,
Right.
Chargers and blowing leads. And for the Bengals this season, 6 of their 7 losses are now by 1 score.
Yeah.
So it's been brutal for them. But the Chargers do go up 27-6 in the third quarter and then proceed to blow the lead by the 12:21 mark of the fourth quarter. So not even a full quarter of game time. They blow a 21-point lead. And then in typical Bengals fashion, they miss 2 field goals and then allow the game winning touchdown run by J.K. Dobbins with 18 seconds left on the clock. So, yeah, tough season. The Bengals are basically like the anti Vikings from a couple of years ago, that like 12
Yep.
and 5 Vikings team where we're like, we are betting against them immediately. They can't win a 1 score game. It
No.
sucks. But it kind of goes back to the point that you made earlier with these elite quarterbacks, where the ideal situation is to have one of them, but don't put the entire game on their shoulders every week.
Yeah.
And I think there's no better proof for that point than the fact that Joe Burrow is on pace to have his best season of his career right now.
Just saying something.
Yeah. No, which I mean, but he really is. He's on pace
Yeah.
right now for 4,700 yards and 42 touchdowns with
Yeah.
6 interceptions. And they're not going to make the playoffs.
No.
And on the other hand, Justin Herbert, who typically puts up massive stats and has no success, is having his most successful season ever at 7-3. But this is by far the worst season of his career. But he has like 13 touchdowns and 1 interception.
Yeah.
But he'll throw for less than 4,000 yards this season and probably be wild card 1. And I may even take them to win a playoff game the way they've played this season. And it's exactly back to your point that the Bengals are like, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, you guys got to win us every single game because we're not going to
Yeah.
play defense and we can't do anything else well. We're definitely not going to kick field goals. Where the Chargers are like, okay, yeah, Justin, you chill. We got this and we'll let you know when we need you. And to Justin Herbert's credit, like that last drive, he did make some big plays and then they run it in with Dobbins at the end. But
Yeah.
like he's not having to do much, but can
Hmm.
put the cape on and like do things when they really need him to.
These two teams are the antithesis of each other in a lot of ways. You've got Zach Taylor on one side where it's, hey, like, what do you even do here? And you've got Jim Harbaugh on the other side, who I'm sure, I mean, he's making it pretty clear with his comments about him in the media that he is ecstatic to have a quarterback of the physical capacity of Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
Um, but is also smart enough to know putting all of your hopes and dreams of winning football games on their shoulders is not going to be particularly effective long term. Um, and we're seeing that with the way they're playing games. And obviously, Chargers far from a perfect team. Like I think there's gonna definitely be need to be a little bit more work on that roster to get it quite to where they want it to be. But without Jim Harbaugh, like did I don't think either one of us would have seen this team having a winning record, right?
Yeah.
I think we both talked about just the fact that he's such a good football coach that it could lift them to that, and we're starting to see that. To use the analogy of like a diet, you look at the Bengals and it's most of that roster is just empty calories. You've got your high protein and like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson. But outside of those guys, like, yeah, like there's just not a lot there. You don't have the coaching on that coaching staff to make a meal out of those spare parts. So it's just it was a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. I think you just look at the Chargers and John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh. I never get the Harbaughs right. I think you look at the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh and just look at the fact like this guy is maximizing the talent on his roster, even though it's not maybe not as talented of a roster, at least like
Yeah.
high end talent as the Bengals. Like Quentin Johnston, after being labeled as like a horrific bust last season,
Hmm.
is playing very well this season and has a bunch of touchdowns.
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins, who for years and years has been the oh man, if he could just stay healthy, he's like a glass cannon guy.
Yeah.
Uh, and now he's healthy, coming off of like multiple lower leg
Yeah.
injuries that should like doom a running back, and he's having the best season of his career, and he's healthy and like awesome. But I mean, before the season, we just kind of looked at it and we're like, okay, and both of us agreed like this can only go one of two ways and there is no in between. Either this team is good and wins double digit games and they're a playoff team, or they win 3 games. And there's
Yeah.
no, it wasn't a range. It was like two separate ranges, like separated by this valley that was like, it's either going to be really good or really bad. It can't be okay. And it is really good. But like you said, on the other side, the Bengals have talent all over the place, but they don't have a coaching staff that can maximize the Quentin Johnstons and the J.K.
Yeah.
Dobbinses of their
And they
roster.
they they have they have their cornerstones, right? But they don't have anything in between that.
Yeah.
And it's just I'm not even going to say that there isn't other talent there. There there isn't a plan there that is going to utilize what they have. So
It's just
it
funny. Like Joe Burrow is going to have a better season than any of these other guys. Like he's
yeah.
going to have a better season than Mahomes, better season than Allen, better season
Hmm.
than Herbert. And I mean, Lamar's going to have a better season than all those guys
Yeah.
too. But in my opinion, where we're sitting right now, Mahomes, Allen, and Herbert are going to be playing in the second round of the playoffs, and Lamar's not, and Burrow's not going to make the playoffs at all unless they go on a hell of a heater after their bye week. But man, 4-7, like you pretty much have to go undefeated at this point. And you got 2 games against the Steelers in there, and I don't love that for you. But
Yeah, I was gonna add too, like it almost feels like the plan for this this Bengals team is, oh, we're gonna build this team like the Heatles, right? Like we're gonna build this team like a basketball team. And it's almost like there's a reason why basketball has a roster of like 12 and football has a roster of 53.
yeah, so it's very different to have the best player on the floor in basketball. It's a much bigger impact than having the best player on the field in football, although you want both. But no, I just think like this whole conversation takes me back to, and I know this is probably one too many Patriot analogies with all the other ones I've thrown out already, but like Tom Brady is the GOAT because he's won more than anybody else. And the reason that is because he's had a great coaching staff his whole career and he had a very complete team around him. And he was great. But they could win games in 56 different ways, right? They could win on defense, they win on special teams, they can run the ball, they could blah, 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 blah. And the Colts for a long time had Peyton Manning, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark. Like they had all these guys, but just like the Bengals, they were like, why can we not get over the hump? And it's because it's a team game and it's a 53-man roster. It's not a 12-man
Yeah.
roster like in basketball. One guy or 3 guys can only get you so far. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this though, because what I've taken away from the first, I think, 11 weeks of the season is that we know who the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL are. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. I'd probably put Justin Herbert in that 5 spot. I guess that's the one you could debate. But I think the order of those guys, outside of Mahomes being the number one quarterback, because he's like far and away untouchable no matter what happens this season, this guy's the number one quarterback in the league. I think the rest of that order could really be jumbled around. I think for a long time, like especially on this podcast, I've had Joe Burrow number 2. I've been like, this is the guy. But I think that we have like the most room for those guys to move around within that top 5 that we've had of like any year, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's probably true. I have a hard time using this season to necessarily like knock down Joe Burrow, although I'm not entirely sure that I would have had him number 2 coming into this season either. The slow starts really bother me.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
but
the Burrow thing though is that he's the only one of these guys. I mean, we're not talking about Mahomes, but he's the only one of
yeah,
these guys who's made a Super Bowl.
yeah,
And I was looking at their records and stuff, and like so Joe Burrow's 5-2 in the playoffs, and he's the only one of these guys that's won the AFC. Josh Allen's 5-5, but 3 of those losses are to Mahomes and 1 is to Burrow.
yeah,
Lamar is 2-4 in the playoffs and has 2 MVPs. And for Herbert, he's only made the playoffs once and he lost to
yeah,
the Jaguars in that game where they blew a huge lead. But I think like if you're someone like me who has considered Joe Burrow to be the second best quarterback in the league for the last couple of years, a lot of that is based on that Super Bowl appearance. And I think like for me and for people like me, that it's time to get over the fact that Joe Burrow made a Super Bowl because what has he done since then as far as winning?
Hmm.
And my knock on Josh Allen was always like, yeah, he turns the ball over way too much. He's gonna play
Hmm.
hero ball and sling it when it matters. And if he doesn't do those things and they have success in the playoffs, it's like, okay, that's kind of ultimately where this is gonna go, is like
Hmm.
four of these guys are gonna make the playoffs, maybe five. There's an outside chance for Burrow still. But like, can any of these guys knock off Mahomes? And if not, like, yeah, we're just all kind of in the same spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But like, while I never latched onto the, hey, this guy made it to a Super Bowl as hard as you did, and like again, because it's been such an amount of time too, like it carried for me just every year it kind of carried less and less weight. Um, but like to see him sitting there like with a touchdown to interception ratio of like 27-4 this year, I'm like, mm, yeah, like I don't, their record does not matter to me in terms of how I'm evaluating him because he's done everything in his power in order to win them games at this point. Like that's you can't play defense and be quarterback.
yeah, no, it's not the record this year that has me knocking him down. And granted, like, if they had won all those one score games and they were like 8-2, I would probably be sitting here being like, I told you Joe Burrow was the second best quarterback in the league. But I was just, like you said, I was thinking about that Super Bowl appearance and how it does lose
Yeah.
weight year after year because, like, after that happened, it's like, okay, yeah, he's the only guy who's done it, but you haven't done
Hmm.
anything since then
Yep.
except for put up numbers. And it's like, okay, so how long does it go on where we're like, well, he did make the Super Bowl. That's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll see how it ends up. It's like the NBA top 30 list. We do it in the off season because I need to know everything that happened in the playoffs before I can properly rank those guys. I'm just saying that it's in flux for me more than it has been in years past with all five of these guys based on what's happened so far. And if somebody can capitalize in the playoffs, then you might be able to move up my personal top quarterbacks in the league list, which I think is maybe more incentive than actually winning a Super Bowl. You can do it, Lamar. It's your time. Prove that you're not James Harden, Lamar Jackson. The
Speaking
last,
of our top 30 list, I am taking my victory lap on shitting all over Embiid. So
yeah, I'm kind of depressed about the Joel Embiid thing because how can Philly get eliminated in the second round if they don't make the second round? I don't know. I
that is a question.
We've been shitting on Embiid on this podcast for years. It's been years of shitting on Embiid, and it just everything that's happened this season is not surprising to me.
Yeah.
Not surprising, but uh, the other guy I just wanted to touch on real quick, speaking of legacies, is the man who has done by far the most harm to his legacy this season, and that is Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. The Jets lost again this weekend, this time to the Colts, dropping their record to 3-8. And now the off-field drama has I can't even say high gear. It has kicked into a gear that we never thought possible before, where the entire week this week has been all about how much Woody Johnson fucking hates Aaron Rodgers, which is hysterical after everything that this franchise has done for Aaron Rodgers. For the owner to come out and be like, I've always hated that guy. I'd be like, no, no, you were cowtailing to him about a week ago. And I think that what's obviously happened is Woody Johnson has just been getting made fun of so much for losing that he's taking it out on everybody else. And now there's only one person he can take it out on, and it's the quarterback whose fault it was all along. But yeah, The
You
stat.
know, did you see the report that uh during a meeting on September 30th, he started asking for Rodgers to be benched?
Yeah.
Two months ago.
Matt, did they trade for Devontae Adams before or after that meeting? It was
I believe that
after.
would be after that.
It was after.
Yep.
This is so
Hmm.
like Woody Johnson media manipulation 101 to go back and be like, "Oh, well, I've hated Aaron Rodgers all along
Yeah.
and I wanted to bench him 2 months ago and they told me no and blah blah
Yeah.
blah." Bro, it's your team.
Yeah.
You own it. You could do whatever you want with it. If you went down to the coach and you're like bench him or you're fired, they would have benched him.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear this bullshit about like, oh, Woody Johnson wanted to bench him, but the coaches pushed back and the coaches got their way because that's not
Yeah.
how these teams work.
No, that's
Especially
not
not
how
what.
power dynamics work.
No, it's not like how did Woody Johnson make his money? Woody Johnson is probably like blood diamonds or something. Oh, he is the great grandson of Robert Wood Johnson the First, and heir to the Johnson and Johnson pharmaceutical fortune. This son of a
Oh,
bitch didn't even do anything. He did less than Arthur Blank. It's hard to do less than Arthur
he
Blank and be a bigger chode. Very difficult. God, so he's a nepo.
at least Arthur Blank had an idea.
Arthur Blank's team made a Super Bowl, okay?
Yeah.
Arthur Blank's team was up 28-3 in a Super Bowl.
How did that
Pretty
end?
Atlanta fans are like, oh, they're back at it again. You will get yours in a minute, Atlanta. You just give me a minute. Let us get to Bolts and Scolds in Atlanta. We'll have some words for that team. Yeah, so Woody Johnson's a Nepo baby. This whole thing reeks of Nepo baby where he's getting blamed for it now. And he's like, well, it wasn't my fault. You own the team. It's your fucking fault, dude. Woody Johnson. What a waste of a great name.
Right.
Woody Johnson sounds like he should be in Austin Powers,
Yeah.
not being a Nepo baby and owning the Jets.
Yeah. I mean that should be an Austin Powers villain.
I honestly feel like if I was a Nepo baby and owned the Jets and was still a Patriots fan and was like, I hate this team, I'm going to run them as poorly as possible, that I would not run them as poorly as Woody Johnson does. I would have like kept Zach Wilson, who
Yeah.
Zach Wilson, better winning percentage as the Jets starting quarterback than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I would have kept Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, better winning percentage as the Jets starting quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. It really, honestly, like the whole, I guess we could dig into it on a later podcast because it's going to take more time. But I honestly don't think that and we can fight about where Aaron Rodgers is ranked, but I think the majority of people would say he's an all time great quarterback. This is the most damage that I think an all time great quarterback has ever done to their legacy within this short of a time period.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, keep in mind that Favre did the like will he won't he retire thing for like 4 straight years in Green Bay, then went to New York and almost immediately had a scandal about him sending dick pics to reporters. Like,
Yes. But then he went to the Vikings and was awesome and had his best season of his entire career.
yeah,
So and made the NFC championship. The problem here is like not only does Aaron Rodgers have off-field drama and like granted, as
yeah,
far as we know, has not sent his penis to a reporter yet
allegedly.
with the Super Bowl ring on. Oh, Brett Favre. But it's like it's not only the off-field drama, it's also that they suck and that they're horrible and that he is
Yeah.
bad and forced the
Mhm.
team to trade for Devontae Adams and has continued to play bad and lose games.
Yeah.
And now they owe the Raiders their third round pick, which is but I mean, in all fairness though, Brett Favre also with the welfare scandal,
Yeah.
stealing money to fund his
But at
kids.
least he wasn't playing at that point in time.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not excusing it, but it's a little, at least there's some time spread there.
That would be a hell of a way to excuse it. Like, well, at least he wasn't playing. Like, oh, no big deal. Yeah, it took Brett Favre years to ruin his legacy.
Yeah.
He didn't do it over the course of two.
Yeah, it'll take time for Aaron Rodgers to get to his welfare scandal.
I'm looking at Jordan Love. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy about to do? Like, give this. I know Green Bay fans. I know you love Jordan Love right now, but give this man 10 years and something horrible is going to happen. All right, America's most favorite segment, Bolds and Scolds for week 11. Last week on the podcast, I said that nobody tracks whose turn it actually is on Bolts and Scolds. Our quality control officer, who, if you listen to this podcast, you know exactly who does quality control of this podcast after it comes out, went back and tracked who goes first and who goes second and determined that we were doing very well up until week 7, where I went first in week 6 and then went first again in week 7. And then you went first week 8, I went week 9, you went week 10. So the text says to get back on serve, Matt starts next week. So official from the fouled out quality control offices at my parents' house. For anybody that didn't get that my dad is the one doing this. You get to go first this week, Matt. Who's your bolt?
Typical Adam, so self-serving.
Hmm.
Um, well, because I did it for Bryce Young, I feel like I gotta do it for Anthony Richardson. Played a great game. You know, those 2 weeks sitting down, I think definitely helped him out quite a bit. But I mean, 20 for 30, 272 yards passing, one passing touchdown, but ran for two more touchdowns. Like this this is why he was drafted fourth overall. Um, and I do think it's hilarious that AR beat AR. You know, I think there's a lot of people who kind of looked at that completion percentage and saw him get benched and thought, all right, this kid's done. But like if you thought Sam Darnold was gonna get a lot of opportunities,
Yeah. Well,
this kid's gonna get way more than that.
credit to Richardson because when he got benched, we talked about how this is kind of like the career defining moment for him.
Yep.
It's like your options right now are don't do the work, act entitled, be a dick,
Hmm.
don't get your starting job back. Or look at why did I get benched? Do the work your way back, earn that starting job, and earn everybody's respect back.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just a statistical thing for why he got benched. I mean,
Hmm.
one was not playing well, but two, it was the like tapping out of the game and like
Yeah.
it was a really, really bad look a couple weeks ago. But watching on this past Sunday, I think the attitude was a lot better. And I think that was the most
Hmm.
important thing because the talent is there. He just
Yeah.
has to put the work in. Um, that
Yeah.
said, like wouldn't surprise me if he looked like absolute shit this Sunday.
I fully
Lions.
expect him to look like absolute shit against the Lions because that's what the Lions are doing to
Yeah.
everyone.
So I think
They did it to CJ Stroud. I mean,
that'll be interesting for him though, because it's really easy to walk the talk when you're playing well.
yeah.
I want to see how he acts when he plays shitty again, because that's when he tapped out of the last game. So yeah, credit to him for working back, but let's see how he acts when things are not going his way.
Hmm. Yeah.
So my bold is Raiders tight end Brock Bowers. So Brock Bowers is a rookie from Georgia. He is second in the entire NFL in catches right now. He has 70. Jamar Chase is number one with 73. He is 10th in receiving yards in the entire league, but he is first among tight ends. Puka Nacua set the rookie record last season with 105 receptions. Brock Bowers is on pace for 119 receptions this year and 1,200 yards. The rookie record for yards by a tight end is 1,076 by Mike Ditka. He's on pace to smash that. 1,200 yards would also be the 15th best season for a tight end ever. And 119 catches, if he were able to hit that, would also be the most catches for a tight end ever. Zach Ertz had 115. So basically, on pace to have the best tight end season ever in terms of catches and one of the best tight end seasons ever in terms of receiving yards, playing with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell in Las Vegas. I almost said Los Angeles, in Las Vegas. So very impressive stuff by him. His offensive rookie of the year odds right now are plus 3,000. He's in fourth place in offensive rookie of the year. But Jaden Daniels is kind of starting to fade and slow down.
Yeah.
He was minus 1,500 at one point. He's down to minus 400. And I'm not taking the full victory lap on this, but I want credit for my comp for Jaden Daniels being tall Kyler Murray. Because one of the things I said in the preseason was like, I could see this guy being really good, but being a glass cannon and having that Kyler Murray, like when he's healthy, he's awesome. But as soon as he gets dinged up, it's not as good or not good. So he hurt his ribs a couple weeks ago. And prior to the injury, he was averaging 53 yards per game on the ground and completing 76% of his passes. In the 3 games since he hurt his ribs, he's 28 yards per game on the ground, completing 59.5% of his passes. So small sample size, but I mean, kind of what it looks like to me is he got a pretty significant ding, and he's not the same guy when he's dinged up and he has that rib injury as he was when he was healthy earlier this season, which is very tall Kyler Murray. So I'm kind of looking at Brock Bowers and I'm like, damn, if he really has this like statistical anomaly of a season as a rookie tight end in a shitty team, like, is there a chance you could cash in on that plus 3,000? And I think the door is open with Jaden Daniels kind of slowing down, but the thing that I think is shutting the door again is that Bo Nix has been so goddamn good lately.
Yeah.
Threw for 307 and 4 touchdowns against the Falcons this past weekend. And he is now second in odds. Funny enough, third in odds, Patriots quarterback Drake May, plus 2,500. So it's like I think it's minus 400 right now. I wrote it down. Yeah, minus 400 for Jaden Daniels. It's like still like plus 300 for Bo Nix, and then pretty long shot odds for Drake May and Brock Bowers. But just want to remind people, a couple years ago, right around this time, Mac Jones was leading for rookie of the year, and Jamar Chase was like plus a couple hundred. And I said on this podcast, I was like, I think Jamar Chase is going to catch him because Jamar Chase had just started like balling out. I think like a little sprinkle on Brock Bowers right now wouldn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, I think the problem for him is that there's too many quarterbacks, which I will say what's hilarious to me is that if you would have told us, not even just before the season started, even by like week 1 or 2, let's say week 2, that Caleb Williams would not be top 4 in the odds for rookie of the year voting, we would have laughed you out of the room.
I would have assumed he tore his ACL.
Yeah.
I would have been like, oh, he got hurt behind that bad Bears offensive line.
Yeah.
Can I give you a super spicy take? Super homer spicy take. Drake May is better than Jaden Daniels right now. right now, today, he's a better quarterback. Super biased
Yeah,
take.
that is a
I know.
very Homer take.
I did not say he was as good as Bo Nix. I just said he's better than Jaden Daniels.
Yeah.
Super homer take, but I'm standing by it. I think, I said in the draft that I thought Drake May was going to be better than him career, but
Hmm.
I from what I'm watching right now, it has already happened. But uh who's your scold? Week 11. It can't be me because I just said that. It didn't happen in week 11. It can be my fantasy team.
It probably should be.
It really should be.
Um,
That was a bad week.
Jesus, yeah, that was bad.
Burn the tapes. Move on. I got the matchup recap in my email. Where they send you that. I was like, I didn't even look at it. I was like, delete. I don't need to read that.
It's funny. No, I'm gonna go with Kyle. Kyle Shanahan.
I was like,
Uh,
just Kyle who?
just Kyle. Just a random Kyle out in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, what happened, buddy? I thought you were supposed to be like one of the top head coaches in the NFL. What's going on? You have one of the most talented rosters in the NFC, but you're 5-5. Like at a certain point, gotta stop pointing the finger everywhere else. Like you are part of this problem, Kyle. And like I don't want to hear any excuses because shit, the Lions have lost like seven significant contributors to their defense, and it's still a top five unit. Like you don't find answers when problems come up. They just hit you in the face and slow you down. And like you're just another one of those guys that I'm getting ready to take another victory lap on. So like it, it's not a good look. There's a very real possibility that they miss the playoffs by like at least two games.
This week's going to be big in deciding what happens in that division because the Cardinals and Seahawks play.
Hmm.
We talked about the Seahawks and it was like, hey, listen, three of their next four are 49ers, Cardinals, Cardinals.
Yeah.
So this is really going to define their season. They beat the 49ers on basically a walk-off touchdown run by Geno Smith on Sunday.
Hmm.
Makes me feel a lot better about their season now that they're 5-5.
Yeah.
But it's Cardinals at Seahawks, 49ers at Packers, and Eagles at Rams are like the 425, 425, and 820 games. And like if the Cardinals win and other teams lose, or like, whatever
Yep.
happens, Seahawks win and other teams lose, this whole thing could get topsy turvy really quick because it's what 6-4, and then the other three teams are 5-5. Cardinals are Cardinals are 6-4. Everybody else is 5-5 right now. So
Hmm.
they're all right there, and there could be some separation quickly. I think the 49ers are the proverbial team that like every year there's a team that like people just can't get over. They're just waiting for them to be good. They're like, I thought this team was going to be good. They have too much talent on the roster. Like they're just going to be good at some point,
Hmm.
and they just never are. And people will be like week 16 being like, I'm still like, the 49ers, if the 49ers win their last two games and these other 49 things happen, then they can make the playoffs. And it's like, just give it up. Give up on your dreams and die.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
like
quote from Attack on Titan.
they've they've shown us who they are at this point. Like, and I I will say I think there's an element of I don't think it's so much from a physical standpoint because I think the off season is long enough, but I think this is a team that's emotionally exhausted. I think if Kyle was the kind of head coach that he has been, propped up to be at times, that they wouldn't be where they are.
Yeah. Speaking of teams showing us who they are, my scold is the Atlanta Falcons. Fuck the Atlanta Falcons. I hate this team. 2 weeks ago, they were 6-3. They were leading the NFC South, and we said on the podcast that the NFC South is over. At least I said that. Well, I wasn't wrong. The NFC South is still over because the NFC South sucks so bad. The Falcons have lost 2 games in a row. They lose 2017 to the Saints last week, and then this week get absolutely schmeckeldorfed by the Denver Broncos. This was the equivalent of your fantasy team beating my fantasy team this week. They never stood a chance. They were completely flat, like the worst effort you will ever see for a team that's going to win their division. They lose 38-6 to the Broncos, and just Bo Nix just fucking torches them. The Falcons are now 6-5 and lead their division, even though they have a negative 30-point differential. I was trying to see who else has a negative 30-point differential. Negative 30 is horrible. The Buccaneers have lost 4 games in a row and are 4-6 and have a plus 13-point differential. That's how bad negative 30 is. I made them my scold because I just wanted to say this one particular thing on the podcast. We are betting against this team in the playoffs.
Yes.
I don't care who they're playing. We are not messing this up again like we did with the Vikings from years ago. Sight unseen, betting against the Falcons, picking against the Falcons. It's like right now it would be Minnesota versus the Falcons. Great. I'm picking Minnesota. Washington versus the Falcons, Washington. Green Bay versus the Falcons, Green Bay. I don't care. I don't care. It could be the Panthers versus the Falcons in the playoffs. I'm picking the Panthers. Fuck this team. I'm off the, I say it every year. I'm off the bandwagon. This is it. I'm not getting back on next year. Hate the Falcons.
We need to get you into a rehab, man.
I need help. I wish I knew how to quit you, Atlanta. They're on a bye week this week. They're going to come back and like dominate somebody. And I'm going to be like, bold. The Falcons are back. Bijan Robinson, if we're going to be sitting here next year, I'm going to be like, I have 3 fantasy teams. I drafted Bijan Robinson in the first round of all 3 of them. I cannot quit this goddamn team. All right. Gambling picks for week 12. Week 11. Round of applause for the podcast. A smashing success. Saquon Barkley has 146 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. So smashed the 95-5 over, and then you had him for an anytime touchdown. Hits both those. The Lions, you picked the Lions minus 20. They won by what? 50?
So much.
They scored
so much.
scored a touchdown on their first 7 drives.
Yeah.
So that was over quickly, and Mac Jones sucked again, showing us who he really is. And then the riskiest pick of the week, Bills money line over the Chiefs. The Bills do it. So hit 4 or 5 bets last week. The long shot didn't cash, which was disappointing, but that's what happens. We're back in the black for the season after, like, basically we had our worst week of the season, got really down into the red. That week brought us all the way back into the black. And now we are ready to build on it this week, starting with Thursday Night Football, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. I don't know why this game feels so Thursday Night Football for me. Matt, what's your pick?
So I'm going to take Nick Chubb over 51.5 rushing yards. That's at minus 120. He only got, I want to say it was like 13 carries this past week, which was a little concerning, but it sounds like that was kind of the plan going in. I'm guessing the fact that they had a Thursday night coming up is part of that. Uh, that they're gonna have to use him. in order to have a chance in this game. So, uh, I'm gonna trust in Nick Chubb to get it done.
I'm not going to lie to you. I am terrified by that pick because the Steelers defense is very good.
Yes,
Uh,
I know.
but that's okay because we're guaranteed to hit my
Yeah.
pick. We may hit yours. My pick, I think, is like this is the drop everything and bet your life savings on this pick. Like if you're like my dad and you don't have DraftKings or FanDuel and you don't bet, it's time to start because you can get Chris Boswell over 1.5 field goals at minus 130. Chris Boswell is 29 of 30 this season, which is 97% hit rate. His 29 field goals are the most in the league. And he had a game a couple weeks ago where he didn't hit one. He has multiple games this season where he hit six,
Yeah.
and every other game he's hit more than one. So, yeah, we just need two. This game, like Pittsburgh versus Cleveland, feels like I don't know what the weather's going to be like there. Just feels like it's going to be muddy and sloppy and cold and
Yeah.
awful, and it's going to be like 12-6.
Yeah. Well,
You
and
know,
that's another one of the things that I heard is that the forecast is a little messy too. So I figured, all right, he's gonna I think Nick is gonna get his touches. Um, but yeah, no, it's not the best matchup, but uh I think he can get over 51 yards.
yeah. What is your pick for the weekend? I have a banger for the weekend. You want me to give you mine?
Yeah, go ahead.
So my pick for the weekend is one of my favorite gambling picks of the entire year. I don't see any way it could lose, which means it will. But I am teasing the Lions with the Chiefs this weekend. So it's a 6 point tease. If you don't know what that means, it means both the Lions and Chiefs have to cover the spreads, but I get to reduce both spreads by 6 points. So I need the Lions to win by 1.5 against the Colts and the Chiefs to win by 4.5 at the Panthers, coming off of a loss. I feel very good about that. That's minus 120. In my personal betting, I have placed my largest bet of the season on a Lions Chiefs tease.
I kind of want to take the Texans to cover -8, but also I don't trust the Texans to do anything. So I don't know if I want to do that.
I think that,
Um,
that Texans defense is legitimately good, though.
it is, but the offense is equally is not legit. So,
Yeah.
um,
If you
you
tease
know
them
what?
with the Commanders, it's Texans -2, Commanders -4.5.
Yeah. Um, I'll take. I feel like I'm gonna regret this. I will take the Vikings to cover at 3.5.
Who do they play this weekend?
The Bears
Oh, Da Bears. And what is that? Minus
minus
110.
105.
Ooh, I don't hate that. Are the Vikings the road team? The Vikings are the road
They're
team.
the road team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's only 3.5. I don't hate that.
Yeah.
Uh, long shot bet for the week because somehow we got back on this train. I'm just gonna bet on the Lions to just keep doing what they've been doing. Lions minus 17.5 versus the Colts plus 303. I could see this being another game that gets out of hand really quick because the Colts run defense has not been good this season.
Yeah.
And while Richardson played a good game against the Jets, that was the Jets. This is a completely different beast.
Hmm.
So just I think that's what we're gonna do. Every week now is just the long shot bet of the week is just Lions to cover whatever gets us to plus 300. So those are the bets for this week. Chris Boswell, Pittsburgh kicker, over 1.5 field goals. Nick Chubb over 51.5 rushing yards. Lions and Chiefs tease. So Lions by 1.5, Chiefs by 4.5. Vikings minus 3.5 at the Bears. And then the long shot bet, Lions to win by more than 17.5 versus the Colts. Let's do it. We went 4 for 5. We only missed the long shot last week. And if the long shot last week would have been what the long shot this week is, we would have nailed it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com, and you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. Matt, kind of a quiet weekend for the NCAA, but there is one game that if you were going to watch any game this weekend, I would recommend. It is the Indiana Hoosiers, the number 5 team in the country, at Ohio State. Chances are Ohio State's going to beat the brakes off of them, but if Indiana wins this game, it will be the funniest shit ever, because all I've heard this week is about how, well, if Indiana was in the SEC, they wouldn't be undefeated, and Indiana's not actually that good, and blah, blah, blah. And I just want Indiana to prove they're good so bad.
Yeah.
I want them to smack Ohio State in the goddamn mouth, and it would just be hilarious to go back and see all of these like SEC cronies and all that stuff have to eat crow.
Well,
Do it up. Do it up.
to hear like Ohio State fans to kind of expect them to beat the shit out of Indiana, it's like you barely beat Drew Aller. He's a bad quarterback. It's a really bad quarterback. Like,
He's never drafted Penn State quarterback.
no.
Just don't do it.
Christian
Hackenberg
showed us the way.
Yeah. Trace McSorley.
Yeah.
No, I watched Trace McSorley throw too many passes into the third row of the stands. Not happening. But all right, my friend, I will see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye,
Mom.
Robin.
Go, Indiana. Go.